Someone who thinks they're muted is not.
Welcome to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric, and I'll be your host for this evening as we will be reviewing Disney's infamous The Black Cauldron. It's my best worst laugh. Longtime fans will know this is a bit of a white whale for us. This is a movie we have talked about on and off randomly for
Why is it gotta be a white whale?
10 years because it's terrible. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so we finally decided to just pull the trigger and review this movie that we've been talking about for 10 years. So there you go. The Black Cauldron joining me tonight. First up, coming from Chicago, he's a boy who likes his drinks. Please welcome Joe.
Chi-Town, stand up.
He's a little boy who likes berry and alcoholism.
Bars and cream, bars and cream.
Next up on the show, from Indianapolis. No, or sort of Indiana, let's say. Please welcome Casey.
Hello.
And next up, the business manager at bloodygoodhorror.com. One Mr. John Schnars.
Hello, Eric.
Just in case you thought that our character of him was not real, drinking rosé tonight.
Rosé all day.
Yeah.
Is there ice in that rosé?
No. That's chilled, so it doesn't.
Chilled. God, Schnars. Next up, finally joining us tonight at the beginning of a show, even. That's how important.
I didn't believe it when I saw him.
That's how important this episode is. Please welcome Mark.
You know I gotta be here to talk about witch tits.
Now,
That's Mark's pure Disney animatronics. We've just had him recreated.
now, longtime listeners, you may not know Mark. He may be unfamiliar to you. He does the web things at Bloody Good Horror. He's the web person.
He's going to bring us the Google report in a few minutes.
Yeah. Like when you're at work and you click on the email with the boobs and it's like, you have a virus. Go to Mark. Actually, that's to be real. That's more like Casey.
I can't believe Cece is in here for one episode, and we have 2 breast mentions in the first 5 minutes. It's
Tits, boobs, dicks, fuck, shit, fuck.
I'm pretty sure she's not here because she knew there were offensive things that were going to be said about witches tonight.
That's probably true.
I don't know. Everything I read was complimentary about the witches today.
Yeah. Well,
Nothing pure adoration on this side of the table here.
I was going to say, Joe had nothing but nice things to say.
We're pro witch.
it's right up Joe's alley, if listeners know what I'm saying.
Desires.
Of the flesh. Yeah, it's a weird thing to be talking about in reference to a Disney movie, but here we are.
We all had our childhood crushes that followed us through the ages.
John Schnars.
Yes.
Or somebody. Did somebody know about Tweet with BGH? Did we find out what's going on?
Ooh,
Yeah, bro.
Mark was looking.
Oh, seriously, it's like
Where'd
we're borderline idiots. Tweet with BGH is when you get to go on the Twitters and you tweet with BGH. The new class will be online next Sunday, the 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're going to be tweeting along with Cabin Fever, the 2017 reboot, I guess we're going to call it.
Woof.
So for those of you who haven't done this before, you can tweet along with them as they watch the movie. They'll tell you the exact time. So it'll start right around 8 o'clock, but they'll give you a little signal to start yours. And then you can use the hashtag tweet with BGH to move along with them and enjoy fun comments and whatnot.
Also, follow BGH New Class Live on Twitter because they'll retweet pretty much everything, and they also tweet from that account.
There you go.
Yeah.
Tweet with BGH.
Yeah, bro. That's that.
Casey,
Yes,
you had fun times this weekend.
I did. I got to take my wife to see Truth or Dare for Mother's Day.
Wow.
As one does.
Yeah.
I had no idea that you guys were such big Madonna fans.
Did you guys
Yeah, I
think?
know.
Did you guys think maybe it was like some kind of sex thing that would like get
Thanks, John.
you in the mood?
I was hoping, but no, it didn't work out
Yeah. Bummer.
that way. We have seen worse movies.
All right.
The quick and easy. What was Unfriended? Was the one they ended up in like the grain silo or whatever? It's better than that.
Yeah. There you go.
No,
But it's no Happy Death Day.
no. Unfriended, I believe, was the one we all like that you don't
Okay,
like.
friend
'cause you're old.
request.
Friend,
Yeah,
I believe
you're
friend
thinking of
request is a
Friend
terrible one,
Request.
and we literally do that every time that movie comes up.
Did you call
Yeah.
it a grain siler, by the way?
Silo.
Oh, okay.
That's
Siler.
how we say it in
John,
Indiana.
I'm pretty
John.
sure.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure out of all of us, Casey is the most qualified to talk about
Yeah,
Grain
it's fair. All right, you're right. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. I'm sorry.
Siler. I hardly
I'd
know
assume
it.
if Casey opened up those curtains behind him, we could see one out the window.
Probably.
No, when he opens it up, it's just that painting with the guy with the pitchfork. But they're just people, and they're outside his window. all the time.
American Gothic, you uncultured swine.
You're listening to a horror
it's a big
podcast,
one,
Mark,
alright?
not an art
Except the woman's a
podcast.
juggalo.
And instead of a
I'm not that part
pitchfork,
Indianapolis.
instead of a
American Juggalo.
instead of a pitchfork, it's a bottle of Faygo.
Whoop,
I think
whoop.
we're onto something here.
You may be.
I'm not like entirely unsure that if you Googled like Juggalo American Gothic, that something wouldn't be on Google already.
I'm on
I'm
it.
sure it
Huh?
is. What is that? Rule 34?
I can't take credit for this, but I think it was Cece that sent it to us. Said now that it's short season, the rule of thumb is above the knee. That's what we want to see. Below the knee, a juggalo you be.
There are a lot of results for Juggalo American Gothic, but none that are actually the money spot of here of what we're looking for here.
There does seem to be one Juggalo in a cowboy hat that pops up a lot.
A lot of
Yeah.
nudity.
I think
Yep.
I think that juggalo's name is Dick Trickle.
Mm. Is that real?
No.
Oh.
He's a NASCAR driver.
Yeah. Gonna run that around like old Dick Triggle.
There's a
Man,
there's
Search
a doc.
for Juggalo anything. I could. This is. there's a
Yeah, I
lot
gotta
of
turn this
images.
off. There's a documentary called American Juggalo, which sounds pretty good.
Oh yeah, watched it.
I've seen it.
Patrons
That's
are
a-
really getting their money's worth on the video
Yeah.
feed tonight, huh?
Yeah.
Speaking of Joe, you promised to send me. Can you guys send me some of those goofy Disney pictures of yourself again?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I
that
got
was the
plenty.
biggest thing. Like, so we're talking about American Gothic, and we'll get to it. But like, I forgot that Disney. Not that Disney was Joe's thing, but just like didn't occur to me that like, oh, the Black Cauldron is a thing that Joe might know like a lot of fucking weird minutia about, and it turns out he totally does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am super pumped to talk about this. It holds a special place in my heart for many, many years. So I've got the VHS floating around this house somewhere.
Schnars, I'll
I
take that.
think I do too, actually.
Schnars, I'll take that Splash Mountain pic you had there too, if you can. If you got a
Yeah,
moment.
I gotta save it out of the email that I sent you, and now I'll repost it for you. Don't worry.
Very nice. Thanks, John. In the meantime, Joe,
Mhm.
while we explore the depths of why you have such a rabid Disney addiction, which is a door I'm not sure any of us are ready to go down, why don't you tell us what we're drinking?
Beer guts.
All I hear is just the rabbit from those Skittles commercials.
Yo, yo, yo.
Yeah.
The Black Cauldron, a fun little animated flick about a boy and his pig.
Sure.
Son
No.
pig.
You could say he's a pig boy.
And if you're gonna drink a beer with this movie, might I suggest a beer from the fine folks at Saranac Brewing? That's up in Utica, New York.
Yeah.
And I picked a beer.
Which is hilarious because Saranac and Utica could not be two more different places in the same state.
Truth indeed. I picked their Black Forest black ale. You see
Mm.
how that ties in? This is what they call a Schwarzbier, which
By they, do you mean your racist uncle?
which you might be.
Jesus.
Actually, you're actually thinking Krautlager, Eric. That's it.
Anywho, it's a Bavarian black beer, and really the name is kind of loose. Like there's no distinct style to it. So you think black ale, you think that this is going to be super heavy and really like big on the malts, which it's not always. It's actually on the lighter side. In color, it's definitely very dark, but as far as like drinkability and like it's not like a super heavy beer, like it's not a stout or a porter. It's actually a little more on like the refreshing side. It's just you do kind of get that malt backbone to it. So if you're not into like heavy beers, but you like something with a little more punch to it, like I think these beers are a really good option. It only comes at about 5.5% alcohol, so around the same line as like a Budweiser or something like that. So I mean, you can drink these all day in the sun and still, pick up the kids from soccer practice or whatever you're going to be doing.
It is that time of year.
Saranac, yeah. Saranac, surprisingly, I've only done one other beer from Saranac, but it kind of holds a special place in my heart, and I'm sure with you guys too. It's kind of like the nice beer of upstate New York. Like when we had a little money on the weekends, like we would get like Saranac Pale Ale or something from them.
Do you know why it's brewed in Utica?
Utica, I mean, it's the brewery itself is like Matt's
It's just
something or other.
like an ownership thing or something.
It is. It's brewed in the same place that they used to make, or maybe still do make, the Utica Brewing Company. So like there used to be Utica Brewing Company was like the big brewery in upstate New York. They used to have all these commercials of Schultz and Dooley. Like it's all these. I've actually got like a ton of their like steins. The whole like commercial is like talking steins. So they brew the beer there. I don't know specifically how it happened that like they kind of combined or whatever, but for whatever reason. Because where is Saranac Lake? Like
Saranac Lake is like literally almost on the Canadian border. It's north of the Adirondacks. It's like literally this gorgeous, beautiful like lake town, and then Utica's like
Literally, where is it?
Utica's like, hey, when there's a factory in a town and then it goes to business, then the town gets really sad around it. That's what Utica is.
It's also very close to Lake Placid, which held an Olympic games in the 70s.
That's true.
It also held a giant
70s,
alligator,
80s?
didn't
I
it?
think it was 80s.
80s?
Yeah.
These and more
84?
facts. Schnars is just learning about New York for the first time.
Yeah, the capital region and whatnot.
Beautiful. But yeah, Saranac.com is their website, and not everything they put out is the best, but they're good stuff, and they definitely have like a sort of nostalgia factor, much like Disney to me. So I definitely suggest if you can find it, you should.
Saranac, I feel like, has also been in the craft brew game longer. Like they're kind of a
They've been
legacy in
forever.
that space, you might say.
I mean, as far as like pale ale and stuff, like
Sure.
they're the first one I remember knowing. I mean, I'm sure Sierra Nevada was around longer, but
like doing some of those styles before you saw it everywhere.
yeah, and at least the more like readily available for where we grew up. So they're at the forefront.
Didn't
and
there
I
used to
appreciate
be a beer called Utica Club?
Yeah, so that's literally what I was just talking about. Utica Club was those like Schultz and Dooley, like the Steins and stuff. Like it's brewed in the same place. It's
Gotcha.
brewed in the Utica Brewing Company. So
Great.
I don't know like the full
Well,
backstory.
folks, this has been your New York Minute here on Bloody Good Horror. Hope you enjoyed it. All right, guys. That was my fault, so it's fine. It is what it is. Let's take a quick break and review the Black Cauldron.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Got the prime time, bitch. Main feature.
John Schnars.
Yes, Eric.
Duke University having a little bit of a rough go of it recently.
I couldn't remember if that was before or after the last episode. So
It was after. I'm pretty positive because I
Yeah.
don't remember talking about it. But yeah, they're
Larry Mineta.
some like
My-
university vice president strolled into the cafe and went off on some kids because they were playing the rap music. And then he reported them to like the company and got him fired.
Yeah, we used to call him Elmo, Larry Mineta.
That guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
he was never a super sweet dude, but you know,
I liked it.
I would-
Schnars was like, we didn't really like him, but I didn't know that he had quote anti-rap tendencies, and I was like, is that Duke code for something?
Nah, I mean, it's like I don't know. I don't know if did you read it all about like the actual story? Like, apparently, the song was like pretty aggressive.
So
but it
that's
was
the
one of those
thing.
things where it's like,
So yes, my first assumption was it was probably actually something you shouldn't be playing in a public space. I think that the, causing a scene is questionable, but I also think that it's the calling of the place, right? Because as a vice president, when you call afterwards, you know what's going to happen.
oh, he like apparently went to the like facility, like the
yeah.
like boss. Yeah. No, well, and did you say, I don't know if you guys saw the follow-up story, is that coffee store, it actually wasn't there when I was at school. They've said they're moving off campus now. They're leaving campus.
Wow.
Joe Van Gogh. Yeah, it's they're like a third party. They're not
I mean,
part of the university.
the only way I could see that reaction was justified is if it was playing like My Neck, My Back.
Go
I
on.
wish I knew the name of that song. But yeah.
I guarantee you,
I'm
Joe
pretty
knows.
sure that's it.
I guarantee you, Joe knows the name, the artist, and the rest
Is
of
that
the
what it's
song.
called?
I
Your
think it
neck,
is
your neck,
My
your
Neck, My
back,
Back.
and what else?
It's
Eric?
isn't it on your running playlist, Joe?
That one actually is not, but in 3 seconds.
Had it.
Joe gets too distracted. He listens to that song.
Oh
I
God!
can't be running with this boner.
Right.
Yeah, let him know.
Right, exactly. So, if you are a patron, that means you can get a live feed, and right now you're going to see pictures of Joe enjoying Disney in the most sexual way possible most of the time. Schnars, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please bring us the word of the day. Duke basically was the whole point of my segue, and then I lost it.
That's cool. I gathered. I picked up on what you were laying down there. Today's word, Eric, is cauldron.
Ooh.
How'd
How'd you come up with that one?
It's Cauldron.
Yes, I know how to spell it because it's a really common word.
Oh, is it, Eric? Is it? You're always like talking to people about your fucking
I'm like,
cauldron.
yo, I'm making dinner tonight. Can you pull the cauldron out, please?
Yeah, all right. So a cauldron, you probably could guess this, but it's a large metal pot with a lid and a handle used for cooking over an open fire.
This is what I
No,
think
but
of
here
your
you
word.
go. There is a second definition, which is somewhat interesting.
Unless the
A si-
definition has something to do with a psychic pig, I think you're way off.
A situation characterized by instability and strong emotions.
Oh, so like you could say right now, like as America, we're in a real cauldron right now.
I thought you were going to say that you are in a cauldron giving John shit about the word of the day.
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say John's word of
This
the day.
current situation is a cauldron.
So originally, cauldron can be traced back to the Latin calidus, which means hot. But it comes to us probably most likely from the Middle English, which then passed through the French cauldron, which means cooking pot.
Huh.
Cauldron.
I recently read that DJ Khaled will not do colonists.
All right.
There are so many layers of terrible to unpack.
This is a PG-13 show, Joe. You know, come on.
Calls Rolingus.
I'm so proud of that one.
Why should you call him DJ Khaled?
It's not his name.
Oh fuck, Joe, that was so
Joe,
good.
he yells his name loudly in songs that he produces. and
Oh
this
my
is not
God.
bad.
That's good.
You know
That's
why?
good,
You
Mark.
know why he can yell his name so loudly? Because he still has so much tongue strength saved up.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
he's not wasting
true.
it.
Nothing stuck in his throat.
Jesus.
God damn it.
Lord.
See, John, this is what happens when you pick a bullshit word of the day.
Also,
I guess
when
I
also
asked for
when
this.
Cece isn't here.
There you go.
DJ Cauldron.
Joe,
Yeah, what's up?
can you synopsize this movie? First
Oh.
question.
Ooh.
Before we do that, though, I would like to know: can you love Disney? You
I'm
have
a fan. Yeah.
you have a half sleeve tattoo of the Haunted Mansion on your body.
Got
There.
it.
Can you pinpoint the moment when this seed was planted in you as a child?
I mean, when I was a kid, Disney World was the like big trip that we would take every other year. So I mean, as far back as I can remember,
Look
like
at
I
this
love.
fancy guy going to Disney every other year, like some kind of high roller.
Well, I am what I am.
Did you guys drive? Was it like a Wally World scenario?
We apparently drove once, but it was like before I can remember, and apparently my brother and I were such nightmares that my father refused to ever do that again.
I've done it
It's a
lot.
long ass drive.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
22 hours.
I've
or
done it
something, right?
twice with my wife straight through without stopping.
I want to do it. I want to do it so bad. Like Leslie knows. Like this
You're
is
too
my
old.
dream.
No, you can't do that unless you're like 25. Like that's not
Disagree.
possible.
2 years ago, I drove down to Pensacola, which is like 3 hours shy of what it would be to Orlando from here, and one day, no problem. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say you basically made it at that point. I don't
Yeah.
know what the
Yeah.
problem would be.
I mean, anyway.
I love getting up at like 3 a.m. and loading them in the car before they're even awake, and just like hitting through Chicago before traffic starts, and I get excited. Like
I just it's
right
like
now.
this whole of all the fandoms, I'm just so fascinated by this Disney thing. This like people who listen to Disney podcasts and stuff.
It's I don't know. I mean, it's for me, it's part nostalgia, part like my wife and I started going together. Like, I wouldn't say we're as big of fans of like the movies, although like I do really enjoy them. Like for me, it's more of like a Disney World and Disneyland type thing. Like I love the parks and like the stuff that ties in there. Like that's what we get excited about. But I mean, when I was a kid, like it was all about like Disney movies and stuff. Like I remember seeing Black Cauldron when it came out, and I think I saw it like 2 or 3 times in the theater probably. And it's funny because like we'll talk about the backstory of this, but like the movie flopped. Like I think it made back like half of its budget when it came out, and like Disney has just pretty much like written it off. It took like 10 years for the movie to come out on VHS, but like as a kid, like I loved it. Like I thought it was great. Like it didn't scare me, which I guess could say something. Like I would have been
You
7.
were tough. You were a tough kid. Just lay it out there, all right?
Yeah.
Just so I'm prepared, are you going to cry tonight?
Probably not on like here, but when I get upstairs, like I might just like break down
Later?
And, like,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Why don't you tell me about the Black Cauldron?
Sure. So the Black Cauldron is a 1985 animated film that the good folks over at Disney put out. It's based on Lloyd Alexander's series. And Casey, you probably know more about the books, but the Chronicles of Prydian. Am I saying that right?
I think it's Prydain.
It's
Prydain?
Prydain, yeah.
It's yeah, damn it. I was gonna make a taint joke, but I forgot what the word was.
So it actually
That was good enough, Eric.
Mark
Good
knows it.
So one of the books in that series is called The
Bill.
Black Cauldron, but apparently this story is a bit of a combination of The Black Cauldron and one of the other ones, which I don't remember off the top of my head. But pretty much Disney acquired the rights to this like in the mid 70s, and it took that long for them to put this out. It follows the story of young Taran, who lives with his pig master, whatever you want to call him.
Pigmaster.
He's a little pig boy.
And you will be my pig master.
And literally his role is like the pig keeper. Like he's there to
He's
watch.
assistant to the regional pig keeper.
Yeah, exactly. So he watches over this one pig that I forget the name. You guys.
Has amazing eyelashes. Can we talk about the pig's eyelashes?
Highwind?
That was a cute ass pig.
Heidwin. Yeah, Hedwin. Heidwin.
Henwin.
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 Hedwig.
The most awkward, hard to say name ever.
So
She's not listed as a cast member because she doesn't speak.
She has no words. We find out pretty quickly that Hedwin is like an oracle. Like she can see the future and tell certain mystic things.
I would describe her as clairvoyant.
Yeah, sure. The podcast I listen to refer to her as an oracle.
Oh, all right, there you go.
I don't know, Joe. I'm gonna trust Joe's weird Disney podcast over your,
This-
Whatever works.
Not to get off on a tangent, but I started listening to this 3-part one, and literally every episode is like 3 hours, and the guy is like detailing every freaking scene of this thing. It's insane. But anyway, so in the background we have the Horned King. Is that what we're calling him? So he apparently has caught wind of this pig that can see into the future and has its eye on him to find the Black Cauldron, which has the powers to bring up this dead army, which he plans on using to take over the world, if you will. So he ends up capturing the pig. Taran goes to try and rescue him. Along the way, we meet a whole fun cast of characters, including Gurgi, this little like
Gurgi.
like I don't
he-
know what you would describe.
He
it
reminded
as.
me of my dog because he kind of is like a. I describe it as a dog monkey. It looks like a dog, but it walks like a monkey.
A little bit.
Like
And
it looks.
he talks with like a weird lisp thing.
He looks like
And
my.
he likes munches and
Gurgi.
crunches.
He looks.
Gurgi.
He looks like my.
Gurgi.
My
Munches
Shih
and
Tzu.
Oh, Joe, that's really good.
That is really good. Yeah.
Like he's got the same
I
mustache.
was obsessed with Gurgi when I was a kid. Like I had a
Um,
little stuffed Gurgi.
Yeah, he's
like,
cute. He's cute. He's kind of.
Um,
I mean, he's kind of a dick in the beginning, but
Well,
The munchies and crunchies.
Joe.
thing
So
is-
before
you can't get over it.
before we get into the review part, Joe, can you give me a little bit of the background as far as the changes at Disney? Like I don't know if there's we can just kind of ballpark.
so yeah, so this came out after Walt had passed away, and pretty much it was right at the beginning of the. Is this when Eisner was kind of taking over? It was him and what the
Katzenberg?
Katzenberg.
Katzenberg was kind of leading up the animation arm. So at that time, like all the animated films were kind of on a downswing, and they really saw the Black Cauldron as being like their big new movie that's going to kind of save the entire department. And like they were really putting all their eggs in their basket on this. Like at the time, it was the most expensive movie that they had ever made. It was the first movie that they used any sort of like digital effects in. They
First PG rated
first
Disney
PG.
film.
So I mean, that's a little bit of like the backstory. They ended up. This is the first one that they didn't have any sort of like background songs or anything. Like Disney, when you think of it, you always think of like the animated movie and the song that ties into it. This one is strictly just sort of background music. There's no like accompanying, like song that you're going to be singing as you walk out. So they did a lot of things differently here. And-
Gurgi.
So they had what they called they refer to as the 9 old men, who were kind of the original guys that did all the animation and kind of put together like all of the old movies that you remember seeing. So they kind of took their first crack at it, couldn't get it. So they brought in all new animators, and they were really going for like that look and style that you see. Casey, you brought it up in Wizards and like a lot of the Dungeon and Dragon stuff that was becoming like really popular in the 70s. So they kind of went for that, and it ended up, the concepts and everything ended up being the most expensive movie that they ever made.
Huh.
When Katzenberg got his hands on it, they watched a screening of it. People were like freaking out because it was so dark and like frightening, because they were also aiming this at like a teenage male audience. Because at the time, like Disney was also starting to get this like aura around them that it was just like kiddie stuff. One of the quotes I actually read that the animators used to joke about is, if they made a movie about World War II, they would have titled it like "Those Darn Nazis." Like that was the whole idea. So they screened this thing. They freaked out. Ended up editing out like 12 minutes of it.
Huh.
At the time, like Katzenberg was worried that this was going to get an R rating. So they edited it, got it down to what he thought would have been like a PG-13. He actually went in and edited some more of it, which gave us what we have now. So a lot of the complaints that when it first came out was that it's like a little disjointed. Like you can definitely tell there's certain parts where there's cuts made. We'll talk.
It was really weird for them to edit a movie like this after, because usually with animation you want to like conserve your budget by not animating things that you're not going to use, and
Yeah,
so like for him to cut stuff after the fact is like a huge deal.
It's the first time they had done that.
Do you
since,
think it was one of those things? You want to bet that all those old Disney animators wanted to like burn his house down?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming by like they kind of got through like the concept art and weren't actually like animating by that. But like, yeah, after the fact, like John said, like this is actually the first time they did any editing post animation since Snow White, which was their first animated film. So I mean, that kind of makes sense. Like it's the first one they're doing. Like after the fact, you kind of figure, all right, this maybe doesn't work. But like by this point, they had kind of gotten what they were doing down, and like everything was edited during storyboards. So it's like it was a huge deal. They ended up going like way over budget. When it was released, it ended up making about like 21 million. At the end of the day, they ended up spending about 44 on it. At the time, was like the most expensive movie that they had ever put out.
That's
And-
crazy because it seems kind of so like I love the animation, but it seems very simple
Yeah.
looking at it. Because you also mentioned, so this was right around the time they did Tron, this era, and so Tron was like one of the first movies to use like computer effects. And this thing you said had some computer effects in it too, but I didn't know, I couldn't like readily pick them out.
So that little, like, it's literally they used the computer animation to kind of bend some things and do like a few effects. They weren't actually using like CGI to do like full on scenes.
They were trying to manipulate the already existing cells and stuff.
So like that little blue orb that kind of follows them around the dungeon, that thing was actually CGI. And then there's a scene later, like when the zombies are coming out, and it's almost like a hologram effect when they're walking across. Yeah. Like that was done with computers. Like it's very, very like rudimentary. Like they weren't.
There was one scene too where I feel like they used it for like a 3D plane or like some sort of depth. I can't remember exactly where it was, but.
Well, that's interesting too, because like Eric was talking about it over email, and I forget the name of the camera, but this was one of like the last movies where Disney used like what the hell do they call it, Eric? You use the word.
It's like a parallax.
The multiplane or something?
Yeah, well, the
Multiplane
camera is called the
Yeah.
multiplane, but it achieves this parallax effect where you have different layers over one another at different depths. And then when you kind of either pan the camera across or you're moving the frames, it gives this illusion of 3D depth and movement, because the different like foreground, midground, background, they're all moving at different rates because of the distance that they are. And then
Joe, did you ever go see the Disney exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry?
Yeah, I think you joined the email chain late, but yeah, actually that's where I kind of read about this. So they had been using.
They had one of those cameras.
Joe sent the picture. It's like you see where they stack the cells and then they put the cameras looking down on it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Really...
These cameras had existed before Disney, but they kind of really invented their own. In Snow White, they started using it, and a lot of like the old like Silly Symphony, like the cartoons that they put out, that's where they were kind of testing it. So they really kind of like perfected the planes on these animated films. But by the time this movie came out, like they were getting past that, like they didn't need to do it anymore, and it was like getting really expensive. I think The Little Mermaid was the last movie where they actually used it, but by this part it was kind of like a dying art form for them.
Joe, can I just say, this is the most lucid you've been on any topic in the entire run of this show. You were like so focused and earnest right now, and I love it.
You know what's funny is all this is bullshit. Like none of this stuff is like facts.
It sounds true. So, and just really quickly, and then we'll get into the review too. Like, I thought it was interesting too because you mentioned. I mean, I was born in '82, so when I think Disney, I just think of Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin, that era, and that just is Disney to me. I never really occurred to me. Then you were talking about how this period that this movie came out in was this kind of dark era, and that they were in the midst of beginning this turnaround, but that there was this idea that Disney was kind of in the dumps and not really this big thing. And then Eisen and Katzenberg kind of took over and ripped off this series of basically like their most successful movies of all time. And then Schnars pointed out, and then you look at them today and it's like they own friggin' Marvel and Star Wars. Like, but it's funny to think that there was this inflection point that I was just kind of too young to be aware of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always find that kind of interesting. Like my wife always jokes around that she took her nephews to see Battlefield Earth when it came out in theaters, and like the kids loved it. Like Leslie's like, this is garbage, but like the kids, they don't get it. So like, when I was 7, I'm watching this and I'm like, this movie's amazing. Like it's a movie I'm watching in the theater. Like you love everything.
And it's well, let's talk about it because it is very charming, right? Like especially looking back, it's easy to look back now. And you have you can be very forgiving with it, and then just kind of take it on its face for the charming parts of it. I think, because also it's like it's an animated kids movie. Like I'm not looking for fucking, Schindler's List or something.
Well, that's what makes this movie surprising, though, because
why is that what she went?
I don't know. I was thinking. I was trying.
Like it's either this or Schindler's List. I don't know.
I was trying to think of a prestige film, and it was the first thing that came to mind.
Okay.
John Schnars, what do you think? Sorry, Casey.
All right, so like I will probably play the role of the Debbie Downer for this moon. Like, look, like I enjoyed watching this. I think there's like a lot of value to watching it. It's not a good movie. Like structurally, it is almost like nonsensical in terms of the plot itself. I think in some ways, it's a really interesting case study in the fact that Disney had like all of this muscle memory around things like the Princess Ilanwe. Is that I think that's how you say her name, Princess Ilanwe character. Even like Taran, they were really good at animating them. They were really good at finding the right people to kind of voice them and voice them in interesting and sort of like compelling ways. But the actual plot of this I mean, the script is just really, really bad. And I think some of this, Joe hit on the fact that like this was edited multiple times, or they really struggled because they had owned this property for a long time. They really struggled to get to a script that made sense. And then even after they did that, there was like new leadership that came in and kind of edited it in kind of funky ways. It has weird tonal elements to it because you have this like Gurgi character. We also should talk about, I think is it Ordu or like the goblin, like the mini goblin character who's like
Creeper.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Okay. So yeah, you have these like two weird, like pretty funny characters, but then the rest of the film is like super duper dark, like really dark. And I don't know, it has a very strange it does not fit the like sort of like narrative structure that you would expect from a Disney film or from like really any kind of like heroic journey type of film, which is what this like.
I don't necessarily agree with that though. I mean, that kind of hits the typical, the overused, especially nowadays, fantasy trope where you have a kid that's born from nothing and all of a sudden finds out he's going to kind of save the world and grows into it. That's kind of overused these days.
All right. Well, Casey, the point is that like it uses, so like the Lloyd Alexander story that is underpinning this is, to your point, like a very standard like Bildungsroman, like a kid grows from like pig boy to the hero. They just like cheat all of it. Like if you didn't know anything about mythology or the back, like you would come into this and be like, what the fuck is going on? Like this, like the characters are very, very flat themselves.
Yeah.
The other thing, and like I know I'm like talking a lot here, but if you compare this really quick, Eric, compare this to something like Beauty and the Beast, right? So Beauty and the Beast is like the pinnacle of kind of like Disney, right? It was the one that was nominated for Best Picture. It comes like roughly 8 years after this, I think, something like that. If you think about that film and like the way that it creates a world around that film, there's no other characters in this movie other than Taryn, the princess, Fleder Flam, the Horned King. There's no like town, like you don't get any sense of the world here other than those characters. Does that make sense? Like there's no scene where there's like a group of people, which was really weird to me.
Well, there is. I mean, there is.
Well, because the whole plot is about how the zombies are going to come back to life and kill everybody, and we never see another person except the old guy.
Yeah. No,
Like,
there's literally no other people in the entire film.
Well, you get those little clips of like the Horn King's current army. Like he's got like a little band of.
Okay, but those.
I
don't know.
They're like pirates or something.
It didn't really bother me, but I see Schnarch's point, I guess, is my.
Oh yeah. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I mean, for me, it's very tough to separate this from nostalgia.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I 100% like I see the flaws here, and I do think some of the editing has a lot to do with it, and I think a lot of it has to do with just your expectations of what you're going to get from a Disney film, and this is like far and away nothing like anything else they've ever put out.
Yeah, and we talked about we're jumping out of sequence here, but we talked about it in the emails too, because this was kind of a weird era for Disney too, when because we talked about this is when we had the Great Mouse Detective and stuff like that, and not like these big premiere animated movies that they're known for.
No, like I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, like literally Disney. There was discussion in the 80s that Disney was going to be acquired by like much shittier companies, whereas like now today is like Disney is like one of like the 5 biggest media companies in the world. I mean. They were like, this was an example of a movie. Like when we say it was at the nadir, like they were literally, they were done. They were dead. And those other films like brought the studio back in a way that, So
Mark, what did you think of this?
So I didn't know much about this movie, although I had figured that I had seen it at some point, but it turns out that I've never seen this movie. I thought that maybe like there was I had seen it on TV, or there was some sort of like lingering nostalgia or memory of it. I remember none of this. It somewhat loosely resembles like the Sword in the Stone, but beyond that, there's just like nothing in this that really brought up any memories. To John's point, and so like I have no nostalgia to go on, and I have some understanding of the kind of history because we've talked about it a bunch before this and after it. But I'm with John that besides the fact that it's tonally off, which is fine. I think the tone's really kind of cool actually. It was even darker than I expected. Like I mentioned, the score is one thing that like it practically sounds like the Exorcist score. Like there's no like little happy notes in here. It's all sort of like foreboding and weird. And that tone starts immediately too. It's not like, hey, here's some whimsy and then here's the journey. It's like the journey starts immediately with like a dragon attack. But to John's point, like that's to me what's so weird about this narratively, and I think what he was getting at with the world building thing. It's like you have like 2 minutes of establishing this is Pig Boy, this is Oracle Pig, and then they're like immediately attacked and they're on this long journey, and they do have some kind of semblance of like a traditional fantasy narrative. Like they run into the fairies, and so you get to see like that part of the world. Like typically I would think of something like Labyrinth, right, where most of the movie is like them running into these little challenges and kind of setting up all these weird things in the world, and you just don't get a ton of that here. Or you do, but it's like it's sort of, it feels kind of out of sync and a little disjointed. That said, I thought just from a historical perspective, like I think the animation was really cool. It's a little like sketchy in some parts, but I think that it's kind of cool to see it and see how different it is. And I think that much like, this is going to be a stretch, but much like something like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas is this weird precursor to all of these like Muppet movies. I can kind of see where this would feel like a precursor to like Disney kind of bouncing back. It's this weird like primitive sort of thing before it matures, I guess.
Casey.
So we've covered a lot of it already. Obviously, I would say that the draw for me to this movie that really stood out watching this, because I don't think I've seen this probably for good 20 years, at least probably since I was in high school, I would think. The thing that stands out to me is back in those days, especially as I was starting to branch out and getting into weird genre shit and stuff like that, it really reminded me a lot of Ralph Bakshi animation, which Joe had mentioned early on when he's doing his plot drop. They talking about some of the older movies from the 70s and 80s, Wizards and things like that, and the way his feet moved and the way you got that 3D effect if you watch his feet, and that's really kind of strikes me, that's really a Bakshi kind of moment there. So but it fits in well with those. It's not perfect, and John's right, this movie is kind of nonsensical. I would argue that it fits the archetype and the standard stuff, but that's being pedantic. There's definitely, it's not well written, it's not well edited. There's a difference there though for me, but it fits in well with those other movies from that era. Wizards is always the big standout for me. Fire and Ice is right around there, and it's just got that feel, and some large part of it is nostalgia though. So yeah, I enjoyed this for what it was.
Joe, you kind of went already, right?
Yeah, I think I've made my points.
Joe Likey is the larger point. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the criticisms that people have, because it's not just Schnars. Like I think it's a lot of the general consensus on this is that it's a little bit of a mess. But just kind of putting myself in the mindset of, okay, I'm gonna sit down and watch this weird old Disney cartoon and just see what it's about, and I having zero nostalgia for it. Although certainly feeling some type of nostalgia for this era of animation. It's always about like dirty poor kids. What was the deal with that? We were talking about this over email. Like, there's just this certain era of animation. It's always like you're either poor, dirty, like in a fantasy setting, or like or maybe 19th century London or something. And then it's funny because if I think of that next era, Joe, where they were really successful, it was totally different. It was like you still had underdog stories, but everything was bright and colorful, and they didn't dwell on that kind of stuff. It was more about the adventure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this was kind of,
it's just so dour. It's just like,
a lot of people say that, and it's right. Like, this is the movie that almost bankrupted Disney. After this kind of flopped, like they really took a hard turn. They moved all of the animators out of the studio where they were at and pretty much put them like in a warehouse and just had them like churning out these films after like
Yeah.
pretty
So-
much they were like, you know, the bullshit of you guys spending millions and millions of dollars on these movies and they're gonna flop was kind of done.
So I enjoyed this a lot. I think that it's actually like incredibly charming. The characters are very, very one note, but I don't necessarily expect more than that from a kids movie, I guess. My bigger issue with the world building is that they just throw this ridiculous shit at you with zero explanation. And I don't know if that's stuff that
Yeah.
exists somewhere else.
Yeah.
But like and maybe it's just like having a modern critical film mind because of we do this every week, but just like I need some kind of reason why the pig has visions. Like,
yeah. Well,
and
listen,
or
this
shit
movie
like
is 1985. Like, it's not from like the 40s.
he tells we're right. He
Like-
tells the kid like this pig is incredibly important. Take care of it. Run away and go hide in the forest. But like
It's a lot.
it's a lot for the kid to take in. But it happens
You're
right
like,
away.
why a pig?
But-
like, what?
Yeah, why
So,
not? It's just
The
weird.
pig actually, John, I think you brought it up that a lot of this is based on
Well, right, yeah.
what sort of folklore?
Welsh. Welsh folklore.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess
no, I know.
well, in those old Welsh tales, like pigs apparently were like sacred, so like
Yeah.
that's where he actually pulled this from.
I mean,
know,
I think that
point
if
is,
you
like,
wanna
the
make
movie
a-
doesn't earn it. Like the movie, like
Got it.
listen, I
Yeah.
agree with you, and like again, like I'm playing the negative Nancy on this, but like the movie's a lot of fun. Like I really
Yeah.
like the movie. I enjoy the movie. If you just watch it in a vacuum, it is freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Well, but I think
And-
that's to me that's part of the charm. It's like the characters are dumb. They're really silly. Like this Gurgi thing is really cute. This like high pitched voice.
Gurgi's actually amazing.
This
yeah.
high
God,
pitched
it's the best part of
voiced
the movie.
like
Pro Gurgi.
princess
Something's pro
lady
Gurgi.
princess lady who has this thing following her for no reason. The like random fairies that show up midway through the movie for no reason. One of them is like my spirit animal. He's like this really grumpy dude who's just like had it with everything and just like
Right.
I
can't
guess I'll
take
do
it.
everything.
And like but really it's about the dark king dude. He's terrifying. It's
the king.
basically it's a skull zombie. He's really scary and dark and he like chokes his little goblin assistant guy and he like
Well, the
there's-
goblin assistant chokes himself in
Why-
hopes that the Horn King won't choke him.
Won't do it. As well.
he
The
There's a
Horn
whole
King
lot of
is
choking
like
going
there's a
on.
ton of
legit terrifying.
Really
like that first
scary.
scene where he comes out, like it literally scares
the
you. Like,
music
Voiced by John Hurt.
the music,
you
the
know.
sound design, the animation, and just the way he's presented is really cool. And I was saying over email, like if you want, people are always saying like, oh, any advice on getting your kid into horror? Like show them this when they're like 6 years old, and you pretty much are guaranteed to get a Joe in your life. Like you know, it's just like it has a lot of those tropes, but in a very simple kind of kiddie kind of way. But it's just I feel like it'd be a great introduction to just random spooky stuff.
Well, it's so
And-
interesting though. Like if they're targeting, so the tone of this is so weird. I mean, we've mentioned it already, but if they're like targeting teens, right? Then the sort of introduction of the Gurgi character doesn't really make sense because that's very much like a here's our kids character. so
It's
we
like
can
a little
sell
bit of an
toys.
identity crisis for sure.
Right, but then
Yeah.
there's like the really dark, scary stuff, and then there's like the oddly sexual witch stuff, which I've made jokes about, but it's just kind of.
But I
Yeah,
also
we haven't even addressed the witches
listen.
yet.
I also don't think though. I think that there is nothing content wise to me is shocking for being in a kids movie from this era. If you look at what other kids movies were, this was like pre PG-13. This was in a time where PG was really the rating. Like that was the rating when there was something in there that you might want somebody to think twice about.
Perhaps a
It's
prolonged
more-
shot of a frog trying to escape from a witch's cleavage. Is that what you're?
It's
As you
well,
do.
listen. Have you seen the Little Mermaid? The octopus lady in that is pretty saucy. Is all I'm gonna say.
Her
Her
name
name's
is Ursula.
Um,
Yeah.
But like
So,
my
By
point
this
being
point, there
that
actually was
it's-
PG-13.
Oh, was there?
Mhm.
Yeah, because
It
a
must
lot
have
of the
just
editing that he
happened.
did, like he felt like got it down to PG-13, and he was like freaking out because it had to actually get lower.
but I feel like
Also, I
it's
don't
not
remember
it's not
a
the
scene where something
content.
was trying to escape from Ursula's cleavage, Eric. I'm really fixated on this.
Listen, it's not the content, it's the degree, right? It's not that there's a spooky ghost king. It's that everything around that is cranked up to 11. The music is scary as hell. The sound design is
Yeah.
really scary. It's really oppressive. He's going around like there's a lot of talk about murdering people and animals in this movie, just like wanton murdering happening. The witches are
Yeah.
actually meant as, to some degree, as comic relief, but I think I would have found them really scary as a kid. Their witch cackle is like terrifying.
There's a little bit of blood. There's a little bit of blood too, which
They're
is
but they're
uncommon
actually like
for this
pretty
kind of movie.
sexual too. Like not to, I mean, we've been joking about the cleavage, obviously, but like the whole thing. So there's this the character that almost makes the least sense in this film is his name's like Flam, like
The
Flag-
minstrel.
yeah, Flagger Flam or something. Apparently in the books he's like a lesser king or something. Like he's actually like a noble person.
So when he
But in-
showed up, I thought he was the other old guy showing back up. 'Cause
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
me too. Initially,
Totally, yeah, obviously totally different. The other guy looks
the, the pig man, the senior pig man.
Yeah.
It's Pigman. What's up, bro?
No, but the witches are like, and again, this is where CC would be helpful to like talk about witch things. No, there's like a sexuality to them. Like they have like which like is played for laughs.
Are you about to get weird, Schnars?
No, well, it's played for laughs. Like the whole thing is they're trying to romance or capture this like minstrel guy. And
Seduce.
John's like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I just found it deeply erotic.
it's played for laughs, but like in a film like this, it is like somewhat. It's
The Three
it-
Witches
it
kind of
harkens back
reminded
to
me
an
of like.
older type of Disney.
I
film, for
also
sure.
think
Yeah.
the witches' motivations are pretty fuzzy. The Three Witches did kind of remind me of like wasn't that a Macbeth thing? The Three Witches.
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, the
Cool.
witches
Bubble,
were
toil,
weird.
and trouble.
That was it. You were done. You
But,
were just like,
yeah.
yeah, Macbeth.
No, I just
Yeah.
I find it very charming. I think it's like, here's the other thing, especially looking back in 2018. This movie is an hour and 20 minutes long, which is like you can't get easier to just breeze through it than that.
Yeah.
And I watched it in 2 sittings, so I didn't, like there's actually really clear. There's literal act breaks. It literally fades to black. So if you're looking to
The
take a
degree to
break,
which I care about the running time of a movie has increased exponentially
Oh,
over the past couple
dude,
years.
hell yeah, absolutely.
Movie's already my favorite movie if it's under an hour and a half, and that's something I used to give Eric shit for, and now I'm like, yeah, I'm into it.
No, it's really so. I had this experience of watching this movie, and the other movie that I watched this weekend was How to Train Your Dragon with my son, who's 4 years old. Have you guys seen this movie at all?
Yeah.
No.
It is really good. Like I was like really surprised
feel
how
like-
good that film is.
I feel like I've heard
and it's
that.
say it again.
I feel like I've heard that.
No, like it's. I mean, look, it's a DreamWorks film, which is it's where Jeffrey Katzenberg went to when he left Disney in like the late '90s.
All right, bring it around. Like
So How to Train Your Dragon. It is in some ways high fantasy. It's not high fantasy in the same way Black Cauldron is, but it is fantasy in that it's like dragons and shit like that. But I think children's films in general have come so far in terms of what we expect to get from them. And I say that as like an adult viewer, but also like my kid, like, listen, he's 4 years old. So like he watches a lot of movies and like he enjoys them on the level of like, holy shit, like things are moving around on the screen and this is scaring me. At the end of that movie, he like legit was almost crying because like of the like things that were happening in the movie. And there's no way that would have happened with Black Cauldron. He would have been scared, but like he wouldn't have had like an emotional response to it the same way that like something like How to Train Your Dragon, which like again is like a modern film with like way more sort of like production emphasis around like different elements and like calibrating it to maybe modern sensibilities in a way that this film wasn't. But that's also like one of the reasons that this is like an interesting artifact of like where Disney was in like the mid 80s as opposed to like where Disney was literally 10 years later when you get to like Beauty and the Beast and something like Lion King, which is like as emotionally resonant as like any film has ever been.
Although I
right?
did have a pretty emotional response to the finale of this movie, which I don't know if we want to
Yeah,
spoil
you
it,
mean
but
the Gerg?
Gurgi's a punch in the gut.
the Gerg man, and but like just to put the exclamation point on it, he goes, "Gergie has no friends."
How's my friends?
But like,
And
listen,
you're like,
if
"Fuck,
like Taran had
dude."
been like, if Taran had been beheaded, but Gergie survived, you would have been like, all right, fine, like that.
Yeah, who gives a
I'll
shit?
take
Yeah,
Gergie.
exactly.
if you wanted to spin a good drinking game watching this, you should drink every time they say pig boy, because they say pig boy a lot.
It's kind of great, yeah.
I'm just a pig boy. I'll always be a pig boy.
Yeah.
It's real good. It's real good.
I think it's important to put the thing that fascinates me about this movie and why I think it fits for us to discuss it on here and why we've talked about it in the past, though, and Eric touched on it some. The atmosphere around this movie is really exceptionally spooky, and it really pops out then later once you get the actual Black Cauldron into this. Kind of there's the whole thing after the witches that is still fairly cartoony and a little zany and everything as far as cartoons go. And then once they hand over the Black Cauldron, this thing gets pretty dark. And the imagery and stuff is dark from there on through the end. And there's a whole thing with raising an undead army and the kind of holographic psychedelic shots of that army rising from the pits and things like that. That I can't imagine if I was like 6 years old when I saw this.
I mean, when the actual army of the dead rises, I mean, it's kind of a bummer, I guess, like in hindsight, because not much actually happens. But it's like that whole scene is just so visually neat.
Well, that's apparently where they did a lot of the editing, because that's where, like, apparently there's a scene where, like, one of the guys turning has like all these boils that start like bursting on his face and stuff. Like that's where a lot of it was cut.
Does this?
Well, and I think didn't they like fight
anywhere?
some of the pirates too? Because I read this. I read something similar, Joe. Where it's like there was apparently shots of like the undead army like cutting some of the humans like in half.
Like apparently it was really graphic.
Well, all we see now is they just kind of descend on the pirates, and then the pirates are just gone. See, I actually
it's a bummer. Like I would love to see that scene, but because it's Disney.
From what I saw, it actually looked like the pirates kind of it's actually disjointed. Like it looks like the pirates kind of turned into the zombies because they just jump on top of them, and then it's just zombies. You see zombies getting up in the pile and nothing else. And I was like, huh, that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
I also would have guessed, and Joe, maybe you mentioned this, the like green smoke effect that they use, was that the CGI?
I would assume so. I mean, what I read like pinpointed a few things, but they didn't, lay out everything that they did.
Joe, does this cut stuff exist somewhere? Because that'd be cool as shit.
No, that's kind of what I was saying. Like, it doesn't. It's Disney, so it's not like they're ever gonna release like an unedited version. Because
and they're not gonna let that shit leak.
Yeah, so
it's a bummer.
And it's a bummer. But apparently, I mean, Disney still owns the rights to this whole series, and there's been this rumor, and Casey, I think you mentioned like potentially like a live action. Like they've talked about rebooting it, not just like this particular book, but like the entire series. So I don't know, maybe someday you'll get like an updated version.
A live action Pig Boy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny.
Live action Pig Boy.
So much of the core of the story, if you take away the weird idiosyncratic things about it, it's really just any kind of high fantasy horseshit that you find, right? It's like evil king, plucky young boy who wants to be a warrior, and like it's funny like how I'm kind of ruined on that stuff after reading a bunch of Game of Thrones, because like when I see high fantasy now, I'm just like, this is fucking stupid. I don't understand this.
John, did you watch this with your kids?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I was gonna watch it with me.
Hello, newborn. Let me introduce you to Gurgi.
And I at the end I ended up not. I'm still on the fence.
I mean, at like 3 days old or something, I watched that 6-hour Nightmare on Elm Street documentary with my infant. So,
well, I mean, at that age.
No, well, I like to tie this back to horror, which our podcast is purportedly about. It's pretty scary. Like it is scary a Disney film as you will find, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and not to say that like I was scared, because obviously like I'm a grown adult, but yeah, like Joe, to your point, like my son
would. Safe zone, John. You can be scared if you need to.
My son, my 4-year-old son would have like shit his pants several times. There's no way he would have made it through this.
Yeah, no, I think you don't show the kid this till he's like 7 or 8.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing. Like Mia's turning 7 in 2 months, so I'm like, I don't know. I mean, we've shown her Gremlins. She watched Ghostbusters. Like
Gremlins is hardcore, dude.
Gremlins
are you kidding me?
We tortured her for weeks.
Yeah.
It was right around Christmas, so every time we would get a package, we'd say, "Oh, I don't know, maybe it's a Gremlin."
Just open up the microwave, like. Hey.
Well, I was gonna say, like, just to be clear, like, How to Train Your Dragon at the end has like a humongous dragon that like fucks up a lot of the like main characters, and my son has like said he's never gonna watch it again because the big dragon scared him.
Little buddy.
So maybe skip Gremlins in a blender for now.
All right, guys. We got a bunch of other stuff to do tonight. So would you recommend this, Joe?
Yeah, I would. I think it's a good watch.
John Schnars.
I'm going to say yes as well.
Casey.
Yes.
Mark.
Yeah, flaws aside, I think it's a really cool kind of historical watch.
Yeah, I'm also gonna say, yeah, like it's just super charming and like it's just fascinating from a historical perspective. So, and it's an hour and 20 minutes, so like, who gives a shit? Try it out. All
To
right,
my
guys.
pig boys and pig girls all over the world.
That's gonna do it. I kept imagining because when I thought that the old guy that showed up was the pig master, I kept just picturing the kid being like, yeah, so the thing with the pig is that I lost it immediately, and now I can't find it.
Is that bad?
He's never gonna get promoted to senior pig boy.
Nah, bro. Nah, it doesn't look good on your pig boy resume. All right, guys, take a quick break and do some pig mail.
It is night. It is cold. It is coming. The fear that lives in the fog. John Carpenter's The Fog. Give thanks it won't be here until next year. And for all those who can hear my voice, look into the darkness across the water. Look for the fog. Coming soon from Avco Embassy Pictures.
Greetings from Tromaville. This is Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma Entertainment and creator of The Toxic Avenger. You know, folks, when we're not making those great movies like Romeo and Juliet and Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, the Troma team likes to kick back and listen to Bloody Good Horror, because Bloody Good Horror is the best television there is.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we're back. Back in the house. info@bloodygoodhorror.com. Got a bunch of shit tonight. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. First up, Steven. In episode 473, Tremors, A Cold Day in Hell. That was last time. John Schnarr's word of the day was glacification. Many, including Joe, thought John used that word as the word of the day in episode 362, Blood Glacier. The actual word of the day for episode 362 was glacier. Boom.
It was glaciology.
Hold on. You guys are just muted. You guys are just muted. What'd you say, Joe? No, I had you muted. Sorry.
I thought in Tremors you did use the word glacier, but apparently not.
No, I used like glaciology or something about the science of glaciers.
He just
Surprised you didn't use ass blaster.
Did you guys not hear me? He just said in the email. It's glacification.
I know, that's what I'm commenting on. I thought he actually did use glacier, but apparently not.
Gotcha. When Joe said in episode number 472 his love for dangerous toys, there's a bunch of metal shit tonight, Joe. I have no idea what's happening.
Right.
When Joe said in episode 472 his love for dangerous toys, I was wondering if Sacred could become the unofficial theme song for BGH.
I'm going to sound like a loser now, but I don't think I've ever heard that song.
Wow.
So is it say sacred or scared?
That's a good question.
Eric might just not be able to read.
This email says sacred. Fuck you, John.
I'm going to look this up because, scared, I feel like would be a good song, but.
This one's for Mark. Glenn Jacobs, a.k.a. WWE star Kane, won the GOP primary for mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee, making him the virtual winner for the position. This news brought up two questions. One, what government position would you want Brock Lesnar to hold? Mr. Minister of Defense is too easy. And will Jacobs catch himself on fire in the State House to get his point across? Mark will know what I'm talking about.
Man, he's like a hardcore libertarian. Very smart dude, but also a hardcore libertarian.
Okay, we can't talk about that because then I'm going to say something offensive about libertarians. But
congratulations. I bet he is like definitely the
Undertaker.
largest person to ever hold that office.
It's your It's your brother
should he get-
Kane. Ooh.
Yeah.
Joe
I mean,
actually
good for him though. Like honestly, most pro wrestlers end up like slinging 8x10s at VFW halls.
That's
so
true.
Wait, but you didn't answer the question about the Brock Lesnar.
Brock
which
Lesnar. I mean,
I would say Secretary of Education, obviously.
Obviously.
yeah, no, I'm with you.
is there a
I'm with you.
secretary of suplexes? Because that probably is appropriate.
Housing and
Secretary
Urban
of
Development.
being white and yet unnaturally purple?
Yeah. Chest tattoos. Homeland.
Yeah, Secretary of phallic chest tattoos
Yeah.
for sure. I
Last
would never say that to his face.
Last but not least, I heard that NLTLP is having the horror movies of the Real Housewives this month. I know Kyle Richards starred in Eaten Alive, but what other movies are out there? Thanks for the great podcast, Steve from Springfield.
I mean, Kyle Richards was also in Halloween. She was in The Watcher in the Woods.
So who was the one we were tweeting at the one day that was in the star of House and Sorority Row? What's her name?
Oh, Eileen Davies. Eileen Davis. She's on Young and the Restless, I think, or one of the. So yeah, she was.
No,
in
I
that.
thought she was on a Real Housewives thing.
Yeah, she was on
okay.
2 or 3 seasons. What's her name? The older Richard sister was in Escape from Witch Mountain 1 and 2. I've got to imagine that. What the hell's I'm forgetting everyone's name. I don't know. They've all popped up. A lot of the Vanderpump Rules kids have popped up in like really shitty horror movies. Tom Sandoval was in like one
One
of the
might say their life is a shitty horror movie.
yeah was in one of the last Puppet Master movies. There's a lot of
One of the good ones, you mean?
yeah.
All kind of like they're all like jacked up or glammed up people in LA, right? So they're all probably are they in LA?
Yeah, Beverly Hills ish.
Okay.
I guess.
So like
But yeah,
That's
like-
a part
it
of LA.
would stand to reason that they are some of them are like actors and actresses and
oh, they all are. They're all like they've all been in like a handful of movies.
Yeah, I just remember that Sorority Row one from recently because she was talking with us on Twitter about it.
She's very sweet. We all miss Eileen.
I think somebody added us, right? And was saying something about how she's older now or something. She's like, wait, I'm not old, am I? Like and then the guy was like, oh, God.
Yeah. She's very nice. I love her. I miss her every day.
Okay, great. Next up, Danny says, ahoy, ahoy. I started trying to make this a BGH Classics quote, but realized it'd be more fun with some movie news added for context. And I didn't want to be Kanye and send it to you as a clusterfuck of numbered tweets.
Thank you.
Topical. The forever gestating Bill and Ted sequel is currently being shopped around by MGM at Cannes, so if enough international distributors sign on, that would mean they would be contractually obligated to actually start filming sometime before I die. The title was announced at Cannes as Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is fine, but I was hoping for something way dumber and filled with 80s slang. I think Face the Music is pretty appropriate.
I think that's going to be the rest of the movie.
This development reminded me of a conversation Joe and Schnars had on the podcast a million years ago when Winters and Keanu first began hyping the sequel in interviews. Schnars, wait, they're making a Bill and Ted sequel? What's the plot? Joe, I think Bill said in an interview that it was about them traveling through time with their kids. I like that you just call him Bill here, Joe.
Yeah, well.
Schnars, oh man, that is disappointing. It would be way funnier if they just pretended like no time had passed and had the two actors in their 50s trying to play teenagers. I still think that's the way to go with the movie. Also, since Evan is too humble to plug it when he's on the show, I wanted to mention that one of the other listeners on the Patreon Slack was talking about BGH staffer Evan's horror podcast, Pod Slash.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
I had no idea it existed. It's great. Evan and his co-hosts are hilarious and are not afraid to go against the popular opinion as they review classic 70s and 80s horror films. And unlike other podcasts I could name, you can listen to all of the Pod Slash's back episodes without having to donate to Jim Bob III's trust fund. That's a low blow.
Ew.
Low blow. Hugs and kisses.
Ew.
This is our buddy from Slack, Library O Congress, who's now dead to me.
All right. I'll let it slide. But
It's fine with me because if anything happens to Schnars, I'll be Jim Bob III's legal guardian, and then I'll get the trust fund. So
also, we love that.
I'm just waiting for the paperwork to come over so I can get
We're always happy to say nice things about him.
get that signed. Next up, Spencer. At the moment, I'm not able to keep up to date with new episodes easily, and I only just listened to the. Oh, okay, so this was titled "Make Up Your Minds." So this guy has a valid question we can address that he sent to us in a maybe let's call it a state of anger.
Oh.
At the moment, I'm not able to keep up to date with new episodes easily.
Hold on, sorry. Can we oh my God, would you stop? Can we clarify that this is or is not Spencer that writes for our website?
No, this is definitely not Spencer that writes for our website.
Okay, just want to make sure. Carry on.
I only just listened to the Pie Wacket episode. I really enjoyed the movie personally, but I'm a dirty syrup-sucking Canadian, so I'm biased. And I heard Joe wondering if listening to... I'm sorry, this is a different email. This is a good email, but it's not about the complaining. I'm sorry. Joe, sorry. This is another black metal email, Joe, or whatever.
Oh, boy.
Metal email. I heard Joe wondering if that song the girl was listening to early in the movie was real or just made for the movie. If this hasn't been answered already in a newer episode, I ended up tracking it down through the movie soundtrack. It is by a Dutch black metal band called Karak Angren, and I'm currently waiting for that sounds like a metal band.
Super black.
I'm currently waiting for the CD to ship to me as I really liked what I heard. Loving the work as always, keeping the horror enthusiasm good and frosty in the northern lands. Spencer, you want me to copy paste you this band name, Joe, so you can look it up?
Yeah, I was about to say I would be interested in listening.
Are they not on Spotify?
It's
K's and V's.
It's
a lot of these, like the more hardcore black metal guys, literally will just put their shit out on tapes, like because they don't.
Great. I like that. It's CARACH space ANGREN.
Correct.
So there you go.
Angren.
All right. One last email. What's up?
Perennium
God bless
Terror
you,
is the
Spencer.
name of the band.
Wait, so what was the email where they they were getting spicy with us?
It's
about...
right here.
Oh, all right, good.
This is from Jeff and Debbie.
Ooh, 2 people.
Specifically
Jeff
Jeff,
and
it
Debbie?
seems like. Hi, guys. Relatively new listener. I'm loving the great dynamic you all have. One suggestion. If you could decide if you're going to be a spoiler show or not spoiler show, that would help us as listeners. Sometimes I listen to BGH to get ideas about a show I might like to watch or a movie. Would not like it spoiled if possible. So as a suggestion in Insidious The Last Key, you spoiled it about halfway through the podcast. Also in Unsane, a caster indicated they were going to get into spoiler territory. I had to shut off the show. I'm not sure if I should listen to more recent episodes or not, but would really like to if they're not all going to be spoiled before I watch the movie. Before I read his second email, I will just say, and we've had a lot of people say, like, I don't recommend listening to the show if you haven't watched the movie, personally. Because what happens is...
Only because we are physically incapable.
No, but that's
Well,
not it. That's not it.
Throw
It's
a
that,
spoiler warning.
it's that, A, we always give you at least a few seconds warning. But the problem is that if we're here to dissect movies, and most movies, we need to spoil at least a certain percentage of the plot in order to make that happen. And in a movie, also... if you find us being really fast and loose with spoilers early in the review, that means the movie's terrible. Insidious is terrible.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we want to just...
If you go back, if there's a movie that is like brand new in theaters and we feel like it's super important that you see the ending fresh, we tend to shy away from it.
Yes, exactly. And so even if we eventually give spoilers in a movie, we will give that warning. But if you hear us, like I said, just like flying fast and loose in the beginning, it's because that movie is bad. But if you don't want spoilers, I wouldn't listen to the show. Or I would listen to the intro, and like we are almost always done by like an hour and 5 minutes in, and you can skip the fan mail if you want. But like...
That's the best part, as evidenced by this very segment that you're listening to right now.
It kind of just is what it is. He sent this other email that made me laugh.
You're here right now. Go ahead and skip it.
Okay, guys, you just did it again. To A Quiet Place in the first 5 minutes. I don't mind if you spoil the show, but maybe just indicate it up front so we don't listen to the podcast before watching the movie. Okay, so what I would say
I haven't listened yet. Did you guys spoil that the place was quiet?
So this guy's been
It's actually very noisy.
This
There's a
guy,
lot of noise.
this
Mark.
guy's
Just
been,
heads up.
been a good fan. He's interacted a lot on Twitter. His email's a little salty. I'm not trying to blow him up, but I just I would say just consider this conversation right now a blanket. Don't listen to the movie if you don't want it spoiled because it is what it is. Like
Quiet Place, yeah.
And also
to your
that thing we
point,
spoiled in the first 5 minutes of A Quiet Place.
it happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Less than 5 minutes into the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So that especially, I would not qualify that as a spoiler.
I actually think we are very respectful of not spoiling major elements of films.
Yes. Yeah.
That we respect. If the movie if we don't respect the movie, like the Lost Key or whatever the fuck it was called, yeah, then we're gonna really spoil the hell out of it. So.
It
And
turns
I just
out
wanted to state for the record, I didn't find that email all that salty. So
It was more when I saw like the 2 emails back to back in my inbox, and the second one's like, "All right, guys, you just did it."
I don't know. I think the point we're trying to make here is Bruce Willis was dead the entire time during the movie.
Oh, Joe.
And spoiler alert: keys have actually nothing to do with Insidious. The last key in the end, it doesn't really matter.
I was actually going to throw a thanks for listening, and
Yeah, no, they've been like very
And thanks for the
active.
feedback, by the way. It's nice to have.
Fair.
I should say we get not that I don't love our patrons, but we tend to get feedback from the same people, so it's always nice to hear from a. From a new
They've been
voice,
very
for sure.
active interacting on Twitter, so it's all good. I just
And welcome to Eric's dismissiveness. This is you should
made-
get used to this if
it
you're
made
gonna
me
write it
no,
again.
it made me chuckle, and I thought it was a good time to address the thing. So like
I don't think you
won't.
were dismissive at all.
For me, it's just a blanket rule with any other shows. Like if it's a thing I don't want to know about, like game or movie, I stay away because I know
Yeah.
what's gonna happen.
Before I joined the podcast, I definitely would not listen to episodes until I actually watched the movie for
My-
like the same reason.
my
Because
favorite-
even when you're not spoiling, you're still kind of spoiling with you talking about a movie for 45 minutes.
Exactly, exactly. Like
it's-
you're
I feel
gonna
like-
right.
Spoiler
I mean,
alert,
like,
Black Cauldron has an adorable little monkey bear called Gurgi.
do you
I
guys
was gonna say,
remember?
in Tremors, like there's a lot of tremors that go under the ground and then they get blown up.
Do you guys
sometimes.
remember?
ass blaster.
Do you guys
Yeah,
remember?
there's also ass blasters everywhere.
Do you guys remember the guy who wrote us in and said that
I was really sad I couldn't be on that show, by the way.
he said that he was like really, he's really careful about skipping around our spoilers, and then he fell asleep in the train and woke up as we were screaming the spoiler to a movie.
I don't remember.
I wonder what
but-
happened to that guy. That was the best. All right, info@bloodygoodhorror.com is the email address. We're also on Twitter. Mark.
Yes, so we use 2 hashtags. The first one is BGH Classics. So if you are a patron at patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror and you're listening to a back episode and you find something silly that you want to bring to our attention, tweet it with the hashtag BGH Classics and try and get the episode number in there so that other people can enjoy it. This first one is from Mi Corazon Mi Amor. Yeah, he was kind of filleting John Carpenter, but I think we probably all would if we had the chance. Maybe not now. He's kind of old, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was Eric on Scream, episode 10, top 5 slashers.
That tweet
Coming
blew
in
up.
hot with the top 5.
That tweet blew up this week. I retweeted it and like 1 billion people liked it.
I mean, 7 people, but
For me,
It
that's
was
a
somewhere
lot.
between 1 billion and 7.
That's a lot. That's a lot for me, Mark.
yeah, that's good.
We can't all
Okay,
be
next.
as Twitter cool as you are.
Yeah, well, it's a rarity that anyone's as cool as I am. Next one's from Fancy Nate NC. Eric, I don't know if I could physically swing one of those. Cece, if you can pick up your daughter, you can pick up the back of a toilet. Episode 465, Strangers 2.
Yeah, at some
Right.
point, a character picks up the top of the toilet tank to use as a weapon and swings it, and I just think that's literally impossible. Those things are so heavy.
They are really heavy. They're very heavy. Should I see that movie, by the way?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it either.
I also have not seen it. Who was on that show?
I was.
Cool.
Well,
There's it's split down the middle, so I think you need to see it to make up your own mind.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Cool.
I think it's pretty interesting.
Interesting. I should bring this up again. One of my favorite horror movie watching memories ever was watching The Strangers with Eric and my sister-in-law. And at the very end of the movie, she screamed so loud for a very long time.
That movie
Very
scarred her. Also, Bill Pullman.
Definitely not a movie you'd show to a 6-year-old.
Schnars, I don't know if this means anything to you, but Bill Pullman's son is in it.
oh, I heard that.
Yeah.
but-
Good old Paul Billman. All right. Next one.
Paul Billman.
Is also from Fancy Nate NC. John, today's word is glacier. Boom. Eric, you're fired. Episode 362, Blood Glacier.
Shows you how much I've given up. I
Nice.
didn't even threaten to fire him tonight.
There you go.
It was expected.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. This is from episode 12, Cloverfield, from Mi Corazon Mi Amor. It says, Eric, just because we're horror fans, I think shouldn't exclude us from enjoying an aspect of a film that doesn't have to do with death and destruction. It is these human elements that tie us to a story and allow us to care that they're being murdered by monsters. You know what I mean? And then John said, when you're an inhuman murder freak like me, that's impossible.
Wish
Schnar
I
showing
was that
his,
clever
showing
these
his true
days.
colors over there.
I wish you were too.
All right, okay. Interesting. Here's another episode that I sort of remember doing. This is episode 45, top 5 most disturbing moments.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I don't know about that tweet. But...
So John said, you're 1/8 related to your cousin, or maybe 1/12. In either case, you probably shouldn't do it. Eric, there's like a 2% chance your kid could look like Jason Voorhees.
It's probably higher.
Followed up,
I
so
believe
that was
it's
from
1/8,
Skizbot,
actually.
but also there's a follow-up tweet from Skizbot about the same topic. Also, John, I mean, you know, if your cousin's really hot and you're in love, go to town.
Wait, I said that.
Apparently.
Oh boy.
John is from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's true. Showing his
Ah,
roots.
Wow. Okay. Here's another one from John that he will probably deny ever saying. It's from me, Corazon Villamor.
Episode 74. I fucked my cousin.
The next week.
I don't want to muck up my home computer with all my bloody asshole porn searches.
That was a Google search situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
Come on.
Episode 20, Shudder. Also a great episode to listen to if you want to hear Eric's unapologetic love for Jessica Alba.
And probably Dawson's Creek, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
but
but
Jessica Alba. No.
Slaughtering Eric for that.
Wait.
For same.
No. Wasn't Shudder the one with Joshua Jackson? I don't think Jessica Alba was in that.
Yeah, Jessica Alba is the Eye.
You're thinking of the Eye remake.
Oh, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Which was probably like an episode or two before that, but yeah.
That was one I always remember Shudder. Oh no, I always remember the Eye remake because I saw it on a Friday night, PG-13 movie, and it was also the same night that Sex and the City movie came out, and I could not find a parking spot. I literally was like driving for 20 minutes trying to find a spot in this massive lot.
That is very specific.
And then I saw a movie with a bunch of tweens, and I wanted to kill myself.
Sounds like a fun night.
Yeah, it really does.
And also,
next one,
it
Matt
was
Baseball
the Eye.
Joe. This was episode 109, The Crazies, quote from Eric. Let's be honest, you have the master race written all over you.
Oh boy.
Hello.
I think
knew
we all
that about
know.
John.
I think we all know who I said that to.
Yeah. Next one, also from That Baseball Joe, episode 237, Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunter. I saw this in RPX. This is another quote from Eric. I saw this in RPX. It was really delightful. The homeless guy and myself really enjoyed it.
Yeah, RPX is kind of cool. Although now that I just have like recliner leather seats in my theater every week, it's kind of not worth paying the extra, whatever, $6 or whatever BS it is. I mean, it's a giant screen and there's some extra sound booming stuff.
Yeah,
but
if you need a good bowel jostling, go ahead and go see a movie at RPX.
But it's like, I don't know. It's interesting, I guess.
Really shake some shit loose. All right. We also use that hashtag.
Got the dookie quake.
We use the hashtag AskBGH. If you have a question, tweet us the hashtag AskBGH, and we will do our best to answer it, or maybe not. Who knows? This first one is from Stovall Cody 42. What characters / creatures would be on your horror movie baseball team?
Ooh,
Baseball team? What?
dear God.
You got to get Freddy because of the glove, I guess.
I can't imagine he'll be able to field.
That's a good point.
Throwing.
Something with tentacles. I feel like something
Yeah,
with tentacles.
A
would
bunch
be
of
really good
something
at
with
baseball.
a bunch of
Oh, yeah.
arms. Yeah.
Jason, I gotta imagine Jason's got quite the batting average.
Victor Crowley for his power hitting.
Victor Crowley's.
What about Leslie Vernon for his cardio?
Oh, there you go.
I think
Okay.
Victor Crowley's face is just the backstop because it's just like big and square.
It looks like a catcher's mitt.
Yeah, you can just crouch down and catch the ball with his face.
I think that's the best you're gonna get from this.
Great. Next one, also from Stovall Cody 42. I don't even know how you pronounce this because I haven't seen this movie. Nuclevi in The Ritual or Black Phillip in The Witch. Who do you pledge yourself to?
Oh, Black Phillip always.
Black Phillip.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Doy. Did I
Nope.
pronounce
Like to
that
live
right?
deliciously.
I have no idea, Mark.
God knows.
Cool. Next one, also from Stovall Cody 42. Have you guys seen the YouTube channel Crypt TV? Their horror film shorts are great.
I don't really do
Nope.
horror shorts. I don't really do short films in general, to be honest with you.
I don't really do horror.
I don't get it.
Not a fan.
I don't get it.
Genre.
Crypt TV is I think it's Eli Roth backed, and I don't know. We've talked about
Nope,
Crypt
not
TV.
gonna do it.
No, we've talked about them before. They've been around. I think we may have actually like emailed with them back in the day. But
think
yeah,
it's-
no, I haven't seen their YouTube.
I think
channel.
it's just years of getting bad horror shorts sent to me by filmmakers 20 times a day that it's like I just don't have the patience to do it.
I've got a nice pair of Chucky shorts that are pretty comfy. Says
Cool.
good guys across the butt.
That sounds
This is
pretty
actually
cool.
this is kind of interesting. They have like
get
a like an original series.
When you say
and
shorts,
some-
Casey, you talking like basketball shorts or these like some silk boxers or something?
I think it was the dad
Basketball. Yeah, it was a dad joke.
Oh, I'm just
Don't get too excited,
I'm
Eric.
trying to picture.
This actually looks kind of cool. They have a bunch of different shorts with
Oh.
like interesting monsters that they created. I
Oh,
don't know.
good. Now we're gonna listen to Mark watch 5 or 6 of these while we
Yeah.
sit
Yeah.
by.
That's
Sounds,
good.
sounds great.
Looks kind of
Bunch of-
cool.
Why don't you click play on one, Mark, and let us know.
Someone whose soul is less dead than mine, go check it out.
Cool.
There you
Okay,
go.
great. Next one is from Ryan Smith, 1983.
Oh,
Question about that slasher bracket. No Halloween, no Friday, no Scream. I demand answers. Keep up the great work. Love the show.
I think they probably just wanted to keep it interesting. Would be my guess.
yeah. I think John. I think you asked it like pretty early on. Like I think they omitted a lot of like the major ones.
Like,
just to
'cause if
make
you
it-
Well, no, yeah, no. CC confirmed they purposefully left out those so that it
Yeah,
could
like,
be kind of more
If
balanced.
you put Halloween, it's not fun because it's just guess what? The answer's Halloween. You know.
I do think no other group that voted on that bracket went as hard on the burning as we did, but that's just how we did.
I was cracking up too because like we had CC on last week and she was talking about all of the like deliberating the new classes doing back and forth, and I'm like, we literally finished the whole thing in 45 seconds on a Friday and was like, that's it,
Yeah.
because I just knew the answers. I didn't have to deliberate.
Yeah, we nailed it.
Always down for a good old fashioned inter-website shit talking.
Sure.
Even if they win, they're losers.
We had a goddamn spreadsheet.
If you are curious about the slasher brackets, though, what is the hashtag? Does anybody know?
Fuck, I don't know. It's like 9:30.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Piglet,
actually
little Piglet.
9:36, and I'm very tired.
Sorry,
But-
guys. I tried Grim Magazine to get it out there, but
Damn, we got a whole Grim Magazine. Check it out.
It might be over. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll do some research for next week. Next one. We still have a ton of tweets left. Next one's from Zombie Allison. How
Yeah.
excited are you guys that Fangoria is coming back?
eh.
No.
Mm,
There was a fair bit of talk about it on Slack. Like I'm not personally that excited, but I'm excited that
based on what I
out
see
there.
of their social media
know?
presence, they seem very enthusiastic, and that's cool. I think that's a good, that's always a good thing for the genre. And a lot of people seem like just crazy balls out excited for it, which is not my life at this point, but I get it. And they seem to be doing like make goods for people who had problems with their subscriptions with the last ownership. So that's actually like a really, I think, cool kind of goodwill gesture on their part. So that's cool. I'm probably gonna buy the first issue, even though this newsstand price is like $18 or something insane.
Yeah.
That's steep.
It's around Halloween. I'm sure it'll have that Halloween movie on the cover, so I'll probably check it out.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Next one is from Zombie Allison. How excited? Or no, different one. Sorry. Next one's from BD Paul. Not a question, but it says, yes, please review Terrifier.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're doing next
I'm
week.
going to rephrase this as a question. Please review Terrifier?
Yeah, we're doing that next
Fair.
week, so there you go.
Dig it. Next
You
one.
win.
Reptilicus 2. I just saw The Endless and think you guys should do a show on it if you like mind-bending, Lovecraftian horror. Have you guys heard of this or Resolution, the other movie by this director? Thoughts?
Well, these are the same guys that did Spring, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of chatter about it. I think we're definitely going to cover it. as
Speaking
the
of tentacles.
It looks pretty good. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Nice. Great. Next one is from Mikor Zombie and More. What is a movie that you've seen, not necessarily liked, where were you to recommend it to anyone? They'd probably unfriend you for the content of the movie, not the quality. Mine would be Wake and Fright.
I think
Yeah.
we'll all say Serbian film, right? Like,
Or Antichrist potentially.
Any Von Trier thing, really.
No, I mean, I'm of the mind that like if you're good at recommending movies to people, like there's people out there who
You can judge
Like,
the room.
yeah, that Any of those movies could work for it.
Return
I mean,
to
they're
Yucca High,
sickos.
perhaps.
You see,
No,
Schnars-
that I actually take it back. That movie.
Schnars, do you see that there's a new Von Trier movie coming out?
Yeah. What was it called?
Increasingly, I don't even know, but I just keep thinking to myself, like,
Blood penis.
his like, you know, his tone and his content, and we've talked in the past about just like how obvious his feelings towards women become when you watch his movies, and doesn't it feel increasingly like we're getting to a point where maybe Von Trier won't be allowed to the party anymore?
No, well,
Well, this was his first like time he got to come back at Cannes, and apparently
Yeah.
everybody walked out of this movie because it was just so over the top.
Wait,
It's just
didn't-
90 minutes of Willem Dafoe's boner getting bashed.
No, is it a Jack the Ripper thing? It's like it's called like My Friend Jack or something. Something like the
No,
title.
it's Matt Dillon, and he's a serial killer, and I think it's a modern setting. I don't know that it's Jack the Ripper, and there's
The
a
house
lot
that
of
Jack built, I think. Is what it's-
There you go.
But I
Okay.
just,
Yeah.
because you've heard stories about that guy in set, and I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like that's a dude whose time in Hollywood
he hasn't gotten Me Too'd yet.
I'm just, but not even necessarily like from the like sexual harassment point of view, but people have talked about him being a nightmare on sets, and you watch his movies and even just the content. I don't know. His movies feel like anachronistic to me all of a
alright.
sudden.
Did he direct what? Didn't he direct Melancholia?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I love, but is also,
I mean,
you know,
That's
also has some weird.
That's like it's. I guess maybe that's like the exception to the.
It's
'Cause I don't
probably,
disagree with
it's
you, but-
probably one of his most understated movies in that sense, for sure. Which is probably why I like it.
Listen, I don't disagree with anything. Like I don't know anything about
I'm
how
just
he
having
treats
a
women.
lot of I'm just having a lot of thoughts about Von Trier lately. That's all.
He the movies are interesting. Like they're interesting movies. Whether or not they're good, whether or not he's an asshole, like I will not comment. But
Sure.
for right now. But yeah, the movies.
I
are
will. He
interesting.
seems like an asshole.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
Just saying.
Okay,
Alright.
cool.
Let's move
Next
this
one.
along.
From Byron McCoy.
Oh, Byron.
You folks have been my favorite podcast to night jog to for years. Thanks for the health. What monster, creature, killer, etc. from film would make the most motivating thing to run from? Bonus points if you include a soundtrack.
I mean, I think the theme from Halloween is a good running song. Like,
Sure, you get that nice
Yeah,
pace.
actually, all of the It Follows soundtrack is definitely a good thing to run away from.
I was gonna say you want something that like kind of moves slowly but steadily. You know, that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're not like
Yeah,
terrified,
like
like
it
that you're gonna
beats-
get you're gonna get eaten, but
There's a
that, you know if you trip or something, you're. in
what
real
about
bad
It Follows?
Yeah, it was Mark's point, right?
there's like
Oh.
running apps
Sorry,
that do this.
I woke up.
There's running apps that do this that kind of tell like a story as you're running, and it'll be like be like the one I heard about was a few years ago. There was like it lets you know when there's a zombie in your vicinity chasing you, and so you have to kind of periodically speed up, and then you can slow down, and there's some kind of
Yeah.
narrative to it, and it tracks you. It seemed kind of interesting.
Great.
Mark.
Okay. We've got a bunch more. We're going to bang through them quick. This one's from Seattle Screams. Thoughts on reports of people walking out of the house that Jack built? Does that make you want to see it more?
no,
Oh, there you go.
Is
just
that what
talked
it's
about it.
called? That's the name of his movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll probably watch it, and we'll let you know.
It doesn't make me want to see it more, but like I don't know. I wanted to see it already, and now I'm
Mm.
kind of like,
Apparently, there's a lot of like violence against like kids and like women, and
Oh.
like I don't know if I'm
Great.
in for that.
all right. I mean, kids is that's a whole different ballgame. It's also like if people walk out of a movie at con, like, all right, it's like not exactly like
They're
the
they're
perfect
seeing-
genre audience. You
Well,
know?
that's kind of like some of the comments I've seen. It's like it's a Lars von Trier movie. Like, what did you expect?
Yeah, the people were going in like, this will be like a fucking, like, I
Right.
don't
It's
know,
not being shown
period
like a
piece, like
Schindler's List.
condemned. It's not being shown.
Schindler's List. Thank you, Joe. I don't know. People probably walked out of that fucking movie too.
You know what it was?
I imagine the only
this
audience
week's-
is in like a condemned porn theater or something. That would
You know what it
even
was?
make
This
sense.
week's whole like half of this week's American Life was about Schindler's List, so it's just in my head.
Oh, I listened to that episode.
Yeah.
Good episode.
That's wild.
Great
Of
episode.
course she
yeah.
did.
Great episode. All right, next one. B. Paul. Don't get me wrong, I love the BGH logo. However, maybe Cece should do a new logo. Saw her cover for Grimm and Mama knows her business. #talented.
CC is amazing.
Hashtag Mama knows her business.
Changing the logo sounds like a whole lot of work that we are not going to do, but CC
Yeah.
is amazing.
I got all these T-shirts.
Cece's definitely talented, though. No question that Cece's talented. Next one from Skizbot. This is very appropriate because we're rushing through these. How many Ask BGHs is too many Ask BGHs?
This many.
This many.
We
Last
went.
one.
Listen, we went long, and we also had a ton of email.
Skylar. He knows. He knows what's up.
We went long, like Joe in a room full of busty witches.
Mark, that would be super quick.
True. Last one's from Robel. Rock Allegiance in New Jersey, Limp Bizkit and ICP. I'm going to quick read through this poster. We've got Avenged Sevenfold, Limp Bizkit, Papa Roach, Skillet, Bullet for My Valentine, Beartooth, Insane Clown Posse, Guar, Of Mice and Men, what the fuck? Fozzy, Bad Wolves, The Fever 333, that's half of 666 for those of you who are bad at math. From Ashes to New, Knocked Loose, Sylar, Bad Omens, Devour the Day, Blacktop Mojo, and Stone Broken.
John.
I am highly disappointed because I thought for sure you said Mullet for My Valentine.
Close.
Joe, if you can get to New Jersey, I will buy you a ticket to that concert.
Also, surprise to no one, sponsored by Monster Energy.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure the dude, I think it was Papa Roach, the dude from, and we have talked about this on the show, but the original lead singer, Papa Roach, died like a mile from my house.
He's dead?
I don't think that's him.
Is that the bodies hit the floor?
Nope, you're right. That's a drowning pool.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was the guy from Drowning Pool. Sorry for
You
the
almost cut Eric's life into pieces there.
That was my last resort.
Eric woke up.
What?
All right, I think we're done here, right?
So Terrifier next week.
Eric hasn't even started to play us out yet.
Sorry.
He was asleep.
Listen, really important shit happening on Slack. Me Corzone hit up BC because she wanted a very specific GIF made in our peanut butter solution episode of Schnars finishing his drink. So they needed the YouTube link, so I went and I found it for him. This is just the kind of...
That does sound more important than the podcast.
It does.
I'm so glad this is all coming together.
This is the kind of A-class customer service you get when you're a patron.
If I were you and that were me, I would text you, pay attention in all caps.
Well, here we are. What are we doing next week? Terrifier?
Yep.
Terrifier.
This movie looks wacky. So this guy made a... he had made a short movie with these... not a short, but an anthology kind of thing. And one of the stories is about this creepy clown. And then it looks like he took it and expanded it into a wider film. We were talking about it last week in the show. I can't remember the name of the short off the top of my head, but...
I believe it's called Terrifier.
The original anthology?
It's something like that.
But yeah, I don't know. It looked interesting.
It's called Pig Boy.
Kind of a different indie thing. We had some recommendations for it.
Big boy.
Call me your pig boy.
All right, fuck you guys. Show's over. Bye.
Little pig boy comes from the dirt.
I'm done.
Are you ending the show? Or
I
are we
said
doing
bye and I flung my mic away from you. Was there more? Did you need more than that?
No, that's fine. Just edit it out. That'll be good.
Some wild gesturing.
And we're done.
Oh, adios.
See you.
Jesus Christ.
Bye-bye.
Wait, hold on. Stay longer.